Ambassador James Gilmore, good to have you back with us today. Thanks so much.
Thanks for the chance to be here.
Can we speak about Ukraine, Mr. Ambassador? That continues to be an issue, understandably. There's a war going on over there. An issue that I think goes back and forth, it surfaces and then it dies out again a bit, is many countries are supplying Ukraine with weapons and missiles, but they are putting various constrictions on as to what extent Ukraine can use those missiles specifically towards its enemy, Russia. How should that sort itself out? I know you have a good understanding of this and a number of the players involved. What should the American citizens understand about that issue very specifically and how that should play out?
Well, first, let me speak for just a second, Sam, about where America really is. As you know, there's an isolationist tendency that every 30 or 40 years pops up in the United States, and it's very destructive. And I fight against it every day. I'm doing it right now, as a matter of fact, with your video. I'm against this isolationist tendency because I think it leads inevitably to a major world war, just like it did last time. But we're distracted. We're distracted primarily by the presidential election, which is something that our adversaries understand. They're watching it very closely. I'm frankly surprised there hasn't been more aggressive actions against the United States and its allies already because of the U.S. distraction. But we're really focused a lot on that every day. If you look at the news articles, that's all they talk about. Secondly, we're distracted by the Middle East. The United States has always been wedded to the conflict there, has been engaged in the conflict there, has been supportive traditionally of Israel. And that is a very hot war, which we can discuss in a few minutes. And we're distracted by that. As a result, what I believe to be the key point, the inflection point in the future is the Ukraine war. But what we're seeing right now is President Zelensky coming to the United States. He's going to speak to the United Nations. He visited an ammunition plant, if you will, in Pennsylvania. So he's attempting to shore up American support when it's most needed, which is right now.
In the context of that, the United States, I know, has supplied a number of missiles, and I'm no expert on exactly what they are, but I know they have some considerable range to which they can be fired, if that's the proper word to use. Should the Ukrainians have full latitude with those missiles to do what they feel is necessary to support and defend themselves properly?
So let me speculate as to what I think is going on here. President Biden is frightened. President Biden is intimidated. He doesn't have anybody in his circle that wants to challenge him on that. He does not want to be the president that went out causing a nuclear war. So as a result, he's prepared to sacrifice on the battlefield and in the diplomatic circles and in the politics to avoid that circumstance. It's pretty clear to me that the Russians have given him a quiet ultimatum. They've done so in the press. They no doubt have done so privately with him and warned him that if he crosses certain red lines, they will use nuclear weapons or will engage in a deeper war. Biden is intimidated, so we're not doing it. Now, it is true that you can't end this war until the Russians feel that they are in jeopardy. As long as they can attack civilians and infrastructure and all the rest of it in Ukraine and kill people, little babies and women with impunity, then they'll keep doing it. Why wouldn't they? Because their mission in life is the conquest of Ukraine as a first step towards the reassembly of the old Russian Empire. That is what Putin has said, and I believe him. So that's what's going on here. He's all in. He's lost already somewhere between 100,000 dead and 300,000 dead and upwards of 500,000 wounded. He's all in on this. So you're going to have to pressure him by bringing the war home to him. The Ukrainians are correct about this, but that runs contrary to the views of President Biden, who is afraid of the Russians. And it is a gamble. If you do, at that point, use American weapons against the Russian mainland, they have a right to suggest that that's an aggressive warlike action by the United States against Mother Russia. The consequences of that are unforeseeable. But once again, this is why I believe that the Ukraine war is the pivot of the future. If Putin is successful and he can use nuclear weapons as an intimidation tactic, then the future is going to be that through the 21st century. This is back where the old Soviet Union was making these threats. But the Americans and the Soviets realized that it was stupid. Putin doesn't understand that. He's a stupid man. He made a mistake to engage in this war. He can't win the war if the United States and its allies remain resolute. But if we falter, if we give him something, if we settle with him where he gets the benefit of his aggression, then I think it's Katie bar the door for the future.
Mr. Ambassador, I know many people say they don't want a wider war, a wider conflict, whichever exact term people may use. Well, so be. But it seems like you're saying at some point, this is going to have to be addressed and all come to a head because Putin is not going to, in your opinion, back away from his objective. So how do you see this really reaching a summit of wills, one will against the other? And how does it play out in that context? Is the United States going to have step up more on offense, or other countries do it, or just how should it best play out?
The European leadership is already doing the right thing. They're supplying the Ukrainians, and they're also willing to let the Ukrainians use their weapons against Russia. It is the United States that's hanging back, and that is because of the political situation we've talked about. I think that Zelensky's stuck with respect to the United States. I don't think Biden is going to move, particularly in his lame duck environment. Nobody's pressing Kamala Harris. President Trump has said mixed things. Vance has said mixed things. So I think the Ukrainians are stuck, and I think that Putin ought to be pretty happy about that when he wakes up this morning. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to see what the presidential campaign produces and what policy it produces. My belief is, my hope is, and where I intend to try to influence events is to suggest that President Trump can try out his negotiation tactics. He seems to think that will work. It won't, unless, of course, he's prepared to surrender to Putin. I think that's what Putin is counting on. I would hope at that point that Trump would say, look, I tried, I failed, we're all in now, just like I was with the Javelin missiles, just like I was with providing weaponry to Ukraine. And then at that point, I think that Putin will begin to realize that he can't win and he'll have to back off. But that's more of a hope on my part as opposed to a certainty of policy.
Mr. Ambassador, seems like it's a classic case. There's a lot that's happened and a lot that is still going to happen with this. But as always, your update is much appreciated, and I thank you for it so very much.
Thank you, Sam.